So there's a problem with therapy. Surprise, surprise. In this video, we're going to talk about arguably the biggest reason why I think people don't go to therapy and the biggest problem with it, even for people that do go to therapy. All right. So what is therapy to regular people? Therapy is a place where you go sit down and you talk about your problem. You show up and there's some white dude in a white lab coat and you tell him, my life sucks. And he goes, tell me more about that. And you go, yeah, it really sucks. My girlfriend's cheating on me. I hate my job. Me and my buddy don't get along anymore like we used to. I hate the weather. I hate the city. I moved here because of her. Now she's leaving me. My life freaking sucks. And the therapist says, well, you sound pretty distressed. And he takes some notes. And maybe he asks you about your parents and he asks you about your age and how long you've known this woman. And then he goes, oh, well, looks like the time is up for today. Your insurance is going to take care of my bill, which is going to be upwards of $200 an hour. And I'll see you next week for our second session. So what I did was 50% mocking it and 50% being honest. Why? The big critique of therapy is what? I'm going to pay some schmuck to sit there. I'm going to tell you about my problems. And he's going to look at me. He's going to nod his head up and down, write this stuff down, and we're just going to keep on meeting for God knows how long, weeks, months. I've even heard years. Now, folks, imagine if you went to your physiotherapist, and instead of actually helping you, they just listened to you. And after the 3, 4, 5, 6 month point, you'd be like, what the hell are we doing? What am I paying you for? Imagine when the girlfriend calls her boyfriend and says, babe, you're not going to believe this. My car broke down. I'm really sad and I don't know what to do, and it broke down the middle of the highway. And then the boyfriend replies, wow, that must be really distressing for you. Tell me more about that. It's like, what? How about instead of validating my emotions, we actually do something about it? And here's the problem. Unfortunately, and Healthy Gamer has been very vocal about this, and God bless him, in therapy, people are taught not to give advice and to deal with emotions and beliefs much more than addressing circumstances. So what happens? An individual shows up and they say, man, I think my boyfriend is cheating on me, all right? And me as a therapist, I look at you and I go, well, what makes you think he's cheating on you? And how does that make you feel? Oh, I see. You feel very frustrated. You feel very... And we do all this talk about feelings and beliefs. But guess what? I have been trained to not give you advice. So I can tell you how to manage your distress, how to manage your symptoms, how to feel better, but I haven't told you how to change the circumstance. So you show up next week, and I'm like, so what seems to be bothering you? She's like, well, I think my boyfriend's still cheating on me. I'm like, right. Well, let's talk about the feelings that you have so that we can lower your symptoms. But if we address your symptoms, we're not changing the circumstance. The boyfriend is still cheating. Like, we still have a root problem to deal with. If you show up and you say, I'm overweight and I'm upset about it, I don't have a career, I've never had a girlfriend, I have nothing good going on in my life, and I hate myself. That's why I hate myself. I'm not worthy of love. What a lot of therapists are going to say is go, well, tell me more about why don't you love yourself? Or God forbid, no. Hopefully they wouldn't say you should love yourself. But they would say, well, look, everyone deserves love. Or, we got to talk about the importance of self-compassion. And you got to be kind to yourself. Right? So in the therapist's mind, they're thinking, how can I change this person's belief so that they can start to be more compassionate towards themselves? Here's the problem. I've done nothing to change your circumstance. So if you're thinking, I don't deserve love because I'm not in shape, I've never had a girlfriend, I don't have a good job, I still live at home, and I'm thinking, I want to change the fact that you don't love yourself. The client is sitting there going, I don't deserve love. Why the hell would I love myself? Look at my life around me. So we've got these two kind of almost contradictory things. Number one says, love yourself the way you are. Accept yourself for the way you are. Number two says, you don't love yourself. Okay. What has to happen so that you do love yourself? And then you go, well, I'd have to lose some weight and I have to start going to the gym and I'd have to start eating better and maybe start dating and I'd have to get a better job. Maybe that means going back to school. Then I will love myself. And the really confusing part is, over the last 10 years, we've been so critical about that second idea of no, you don't have to be loved conditionally. Like, you should love yourself right now. It doesn't matter how much you weigh. It doesn't matter that you don't have a good job. It doesn't matter that you're 35 and still living at home. You can still practice self-compassion. And even though fundamentally there seems nothing wrong with that, if the person is saying, yeah, but I don't, like, where do we go from here? And this is a huge problem in therapy. This is huge. It's like, I don't have a good relationship with my father. A therapist is thinking, well, I can't get your father in here. We can't force him to change his ways. So let's work on you and let's change your beliefs and let's change your perspectives. Because if we can change your beliefs, hey, that might be easier than changing the circumstance. But the problem is, the circumstance is still unaddressed. Right? So I don't even know if flabbergasted is the right word, but someone shows up and they're in a bad place, like their circumstance. And if my first thought is, let me alleviate your depressive symptoms, it's like, wait a minute, man, just wait. Why are you feeling depressed in the first place? Your dad walked out on you. You have a drug addiction. You don't have anything going on for your life. Of course you feel stressed. Of course you feel depressed. Of course you think you're a loser. And if I think you're a winner, and if I think you deserve love, and if I think, look, you're not actually that ugly, you're just an average looking dude, it doesn't matter what I think. Because you are not happy with yourself. Right? That's the problem when someone says, like, I'm not worthy of love. It's like, yes, you are. It's like, be careful, don't do this. This is their opinion of themselves. If I have to try to convince you, if I have to try to change your beliefs about you, maybe that's a problem. I can't force you to think a certain way. Now, we can have discussions and we can enlighten you and I can ask questions and I can challenge your irrational beliefs, as CBT would call it. But the problem is, you don't just wake up one day and have depressive symptoms. Like, there's a reason you have these depressive symptoms. And maybe if your relationship with your dad was better, maybe if you started working out more. And by the way, folks, when I go to the working out thing, if you're slightly overweight, please don't get this message mixed up of like, there's something wrong. No. The problem here is you're unhappy with the way you look. You could be the right weight, you could be underweight, you could be slightly overweight. If it's distressing you, then it's a problem. Okay? So you could walk in what we would say overweight, but if you're happy with it, if it's not keeping you up at night, then it's not a problem. Then it's fine. But the tricky thing becomes, if you don't accept yourself because you look a certain way in the mirror, and I, as a therapist, look at you and say, you should accept yourself. You should practice self-compassion. You should practice self-love. You should love yourself the way you are. And you sit there and you go, but I don't. Like, I'm not worthy of love in this state. So unfortunately, we have a lot of therapists that try to work on their beliefs so damn much that we overlook, well, what would we have to change about the circumstance? And there's therapists who have a wide variety of beliefs. Especially, I know in the last 5-10 years, we've become very critical of this idea. Where we go, no. We got to just focus on you and focus on your beliefs. We can't control the world around you. God forbid I give you advice on what to do. You came to me for advice, but instead I'm going to ask you more questions. You have to figure out your own path. It's like, well, how long is that going to take? I don't know. It's part of the process. 4 weeks, a month, 3 months, 6 months, years? This is a problem, folks. This is a problem. And yes, I know that there's this paradox where we have to first accept ourselves before we can move forward. But the tricky thing becomes, if you show up and you're like, look, I need to start changing my life. Like, what should I do first? Should I go after my job? Should I, try to start dating again? Should I try to start working? Like, what should I do? And me as a therapist, I say, well, I can't tell you what to do. I'm only going to listen. I'm only going to nod my head. And we can just change your beliefs. So you walk in and you say, I'm a loser. And I, as your therapist, say, Well, let's challenge those beliefs, and maybe you're not a loser, and there's nothing wrong with living at home and being 30, and there's nothing wrong with never going to the gym. And maybe there isn't. And maybe there isn't. That's totally fine. But yet in the same breath, you see it as a problem. You judge yourself negatively for not being in a relationship. And that's causing you distress. And rather than me saying like, okay, man, well, let's set up a Tinder profile. Let's get you to start dating. Let's start doing something for your life. Let's start talking about hygiene. Instead of doing that and helping you set up that Tinder profile, I'll go, let's change that belief that you have. Why? Because it's simpler. It's like, I can change that belief, or you can, but it doesn't change your circumstance. So nothing about your life actually changes. And as long as we keep going forward like this, that will be therapy's biggest critique. People walk in, we accept them as who they are. If they are upset, we will address their belief rather than changing the circumstance. You're a taxi driver, and you're upset because your job is not paying you enough to be able to pay the rent. If what I do as a therapist is I say, you should be more great, let me be careful. If as a therapist I go, well, let's change your beliefs. Like, people, I know like I'm really showing them in a bad light, but that's because I love therapy and I love counselors and mental health people. So that's why I'm saying this in such a negative light, because I want this to be addressed, because I want us to move forward. But if you walk in as a taxi driver and you're saying, look, I'm not doing great because I'm having a really hard time paying the bills and the hours are really tough on me, I say, well, let's change your beliefs about that. Rather than saying, okay, well, let's think about what are other jobs that we can consider? What are other things we can do? Have you tried applying to other jobs? What other skill sets do you have? What other experiences do you have? Can we go to school, upgrade your resume, and then you can apply for other jobs? So both of them are helping, but one of them is addressing your beliefs and saying, look, let's just accept it. And the other one is trying to change the circumstance. One of the greatest speeches I've ever given was in my university class. And I was talking about sexual harassment. And I said, look, 40 years ago, when a woman got sexually harassed in the workplace, or let's say 50 years ago, what did people say? Look, it's part of the job. Look, he's the supervisor. It was your fault for wearing a skirt. You have to change your belief. You think you're going to come to work and not get sexually harassed? Come on. If you don't want this job, leave. We'll hire someone else who can. So what we used to do was we used to put the accountability on the individual. That's what we used to do, right? And we would say, look, you need to change your belief. You just need to be okay with this. Whereas now in 2023, you tell HR something like that happened, it's going to get taken care of. Like, thank God, right? Amazing, good. Or we should at least take these claims, these allegations seriously. These people need to be heard. And just looking at them saying, well, let's change how you view it. Well, maybe that's just his way of being funny. It's like, really? That's how you want to do this? Rather than making a systemic change and putting out policies, being like, look, folks, we will not tolerate any of this stuff whatsoever. But do you see how I'm really hammering home this fact of changing someone's beliefs versus actually changing the circumstance? Right? I'm showing up because I don't love my life. It's like, okay, what can we do to make you love your life? Like, what has to happen for you to love your life? What has to happen? What would it look like if you did love your life? Like, boom, great. Now we have something to shoot for. Now we have a path. Now we have a trajectory. We have something we can move towards. And this, actually, I believe, is what leads people to coaching. Because when you hire a life coach, let's say, they're different than therapists. They're not as much focused on healing, but there's a bigger focus on support and encouragement. Like, let's go accomplish a goal. Let's go do something. Let me give you advice. This is how you do what you can do. And I actually think that's what makes coaching really, really incredible. Like, if you can find the right coach, they can actually give you advice and focus on changing your circumstance rather than just changing your beliefs. Now, I know I showed therapists in a really bad light here, and there are some freaking incredible therapists out there who are already doing what I'm talking about, focusing on your circumstance. But the problem is, historically, we've been so intertwined with just changing your beliefs and not enough on the circumstance that's why you can have people in therapy for months, if not years. because we're trying to convince the guy who thinks he's a loser that he's not a loser, when everything in his life is telling him he's a loser. It's like, dude, if I was in your position, I might have the same thoughts. Maybe we got to do something about this rather than trying to think about it differently. Maybe, just maybe. So the take-home message here, folks, is this. There's a time to change our beliefs. There's a time to change our circumstances. The important thing is, what is making you feel distressed? Okay, what makes more sense in the moment? Changing the way I think about this thing, which it 100% might. And that'll change. And if I change my thought, and if I change a belief, it'll change the way I feel. Great. Or there's something happening that's making me feel terrible. How can I change my circumstance? Can I get another job? Can I break up with this girl? Can I get another girlfriend? Can I apply for another position? Can I work in a different area that's with a different supervisor? Like, what can I actually do that will affect my outcome rather than just talking about my feelings in a therapist's office? And on that critical but important to say note, I'm going to leave it there, folks. Thank you so much for listening on the podcasting platforms and on YouTube. I always appreciate. Subscribe, comment. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you agreed, disagreed, anything in between. Take care, everybody, and stay safe. Bye-bye.